She was hired for $10 million to be invisible, a contractual wife confined to a corner, forbidden to show her face or speak to her husband, Dante Voss. But when Riley Morgan's desperate act of defiance leads her into his arms, he finally sees the woman he married and discovers a secret about his own family. A forbidden attraction ignites between the billionaire heir and the innocent maid, forcing Dante to choose between his calculating fiancée and the wife he never wanted. Until he saw her face. Get ready for one of the most powerful stories you've ever heard. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. Riley Morgan stood stiffly before Serafina Voss, her veil casting a shadow over her uncertain expression. The older woman's voice sliced through the silence like a blade. "You will not show your face to your husband." "Agreed." Riley nodded, barely whispering, "Yes, Serafina." "I can't hear you, girl." "Louder." "Yes, Serapina," she shouted, her voice cracking. "You are not allowed to sleep beside your husband in the bed. You will use the mattress in the corner of that bedroom. On the floor." "Agreed." "Yes, Serapina," she repeated, louder this time. Serafina's eyes narrowed. "He usually doesn't spend time in his room, but once he's back, you are not allowed to talk to him, walk, eat, or drink in that room. You are not allowed to use the bathroom." "Agreed." Riley's patience thinned. She lifted her veil slightly, daring to glimpse the woman who was marrying her off to her grandson for $10 million. Where was she supposed to pee? On the carpet? "I can't hear you, girl. Do you want money or not?" Serafina screeched, making Riley's ears ring. She did want the money. It could change everything. It could pay for Reverend Isolde Marin's cancer treatment. "Yes, Serapina," Riley snapped, her lips pressed into a thin line as she dropped the veil back down. "You will behave like you do not exist. You will think of yourself as a furniture piece, just lying there. Now if you agree to my conditions, sign the papers." Serafina threw a pen on the table and slapped her hand over the document. Riley tried to read the name of her soon-to-be husband, but Serafina quickly covered it. "Why are you reading it? Either sign it or get lost." Riley signed. Just like that, she was married. She had just turned 18 when Eden Home Orphanage told her to find work and leave. With limited education, she applied for a maid job. The interview was over the phone, and when she got the call, she was ecstatic. She packed her bags and arrived at the mansion. Celestine Armand, the matriarch, had greeted her with a suspicious gaze. Riley couldn't blame her. After hours on a bus, she was drenched in sweat, her cheap makeup melting off her face like a tragic version of Lord Viremont. Within hours, she was told she'd marry Celestine's grandson. She didn't know his name, hadn't seen his face. All she knew was that she'd be married for 1 year, and then she'd walk away with millions. As she was about to sign the marriage certificate, Celestine gripped her hand tightly. "Signing this certificate doesn't give you any right to even bat an eye at my grandson. Don't even think of touching him or talking to him," she hissed. "You try to touch him and I will shoot you. You hear that?" Riley blinked. Was Dante Voss really so spineless that his grandmother had to enforce these absurd rules? He sounded like a baby, still clinging to his grandmommy's apron strings. "No, Riley," she whispered to herself. "Think of the money." "Yes, Serafina," she said aloud, smiling faintly. Serafina released her grip and nodded. Riley signed the papers and they left the room. A car pulled up. Riley was ordered to sit in the front with the driver while Serafina took the back seat. When they arrived at the mansion, Riley was left at the entrance while Serafina disappeared inside, her cane tapping rhythmically on the marble floor. "Come, I will show you the room," said Talia Quinn, the maid who had quickly become Riley's friend. They passed through endless hallways before reaching the master bedroom. It was breathtaking, like something out of a movie. The king-size bed looked heavenly, but Riley's gaze fell on the small mattress in the corner. "Listen, Talia, can you bring my bag? My necessities are in it. Or ask someone to hand it over." Talia nodded silently, her eyes downcast. She had been stunned when Riley told her about the sudden proposal. They hadn't even let Riley wash her face or clean the mud from her hair. How is this F***king possible? He is sinfully handsome, Riley. You've hit the jackpot. Congratulations. Riley noticed a flicker of jealousy in Talia's eyes, quickly masked. Once alone, Riley explored the room. It reminded her of the movie nights back at Eden home. She missed her friends terribly. Her heart raced when she heard heavy footsteps approaching. Serafina had said Dante Vos was rarely home. Riley rushed to the mattress, remembering the rule: no face, no voice. The doorknob turned. Riley ducked, hiding her face. She peeked slightly. Dante stood across the bed, his broad shoulders stretching the fabric of his white shirt. He took it off, revealing a muscular, tattooed torso. Riley's breath caught. If her friends were here, they'd be squealing. He tilted his head, sensing her gaze. Riley squeezed her eyes shut. Please, God, don't let me lose those $10 million. The man, Dante Vos, was now in the room, and she was forbidden to even look at him. He walked across the room with quiet authority, his footsteps heavy but unhurried. Riley peeked through her lashes, catching glimpses of his silhouette. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved like someone used to being obeyed. Dante removed his shirt, revealing a body sculpted like a statue, muscles defined, tattoos curling over his skin like secrets. Riley's breath hitched. She squeezed her eyes shut again, praying he hadn't noticed her watching. He didn't speak. He didn't glance her way. He simply walked into the bathroom, the door clicking shut behind him. Riley exhaled slowly, her body sinking into the thin mattress. She was safe for now. Later that evening, Talia Quinn returned with Riley's bag. She placed it beside the mattress without a word, her expression unreadable. "Thank you," Riley whispered. Talia hesitated, then sat beside her. "You're brave," she said softly. "I wouldn't have agreed to this." Riley gave a weak smile. "I didn't have much choice." They sat in silence for a moment, the grandeur of the room pressing down on them like a weight. "I heard he's never home," Talia added. "He travels a lot, business, or maybe just avoiding this place." Riley nodded. "That's what Serafina said." Talia stood. "If you need anything, come find me, but be careful. Celestine watches everything." Riley watched her leave, then lay back on the mattress, staring at the ornate ceiling. The chandelier above sparkled like 1,000 tiny stars, mocking her with its beauty. She thought of Reverend Isolde Marin of Eden Home, of the friends she left behind, Eliza Monroe, Jordan Vale, Mason Drake. She missed them all. But she had made a choice: 1 year, $10 million. She could survive this. She had to. Riley Morgan had been confined to the master bedroom for 3 days since her wedding to Dante Vos. Her bag still hadn't arrived, and she was wearing the same dress she traveled in, now stiff with sweat and discomfort. The scent lingered, a constant reminder of how little control she had over her new life. She hadn't seen Dante's face yet, just that brief glimpse of his back, strong, tattooed, and unexpectedly memorable, haunted her thoughts during the long, silent hours. Today, she'd finally managed to shower and wash her clothes using his body wash. It wasn't ideal, but she had no other choice. Dante rarely entered the room. Last night, he'd slept in the bed while Riley lay quietly on the mattress in the corner, waiting for him to fall asleep so she could use the bathroom. Thankfully, he hadn't stayed up long. Talia Quinn, the maid assigned to the room, had started warming up to Riley. Though Riley wasn't supposed to speak to anyone, the isolation was beginning to wear her down. No television, no books, no conversation, just silence and rules. That afternoon, Riley cracked the door open and peeked into the hallway. It was empty. She stepped out, her damp clothes clinging to her skin, and wandered down the corridor. The floor belonged entirely to Dante, and only select staff were allowed to clean the rooms. Riley didn't care. She needed to move, to breathe, to feel like a person again. At the end of the hallway, she paused at a door, unsure whether to enter. Just then, a voice behind her made her jump. "Getting bored, sweetheart." She turned slowly. A young man stood there, a faint scar on his cheek and black bangs falling over his forehead. His smile was kind, almost teasing. "I'm sorry," Riley stammered, suddenly nervous. He stepped closer, concern flickering in his eyes. "You're dripping water everywhere. That could get you in trouble." Riley nodded, trying to step past him, but he gently blocked her path. "Let me walk you back," he said, offering his hand. She hesitated, then accepted. His grip was light, not forceful, and his gaze was steady. They walked in silence until they reached her room. He opened the door and gestured for her to enter. "Thank you," she murmured. He followed her inside and closed the door behind them. Riley's heart thudded. Was this man her husband? A shy smile crept onto her lips. "Oh, are you my husband?" He blinked, then laughed. "You do know." Riley flushed. "I wasn't told his name. I haven't seen his face." He stepped back, his tone softening. "I'm Dante Voss." Her breath caught, so it was him. "I didn't expect," she trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. Dante chuckled. "You expected someone older, maybe grumpier." Riley nodded, smiling despite herself. "Well, I'm not that bad," he said, his voice light. "But I'm not here much. Business keeps me away." Riley looked down. "I understand." He studied her for a moment, then stepped toward the door. "You should rest, and maybe ask Talia again about your bag." "I will," she said quietly. Dante opened the door. "Take care, Riley." And then he was gone. Riley stood in the quiet room, her heart still racing. She didn't know what to make of him yet, but for the first time in days, she felt seen. Dante Voss's POV. "Hello, Eliza. How's the tour going?" Dante asked, leaning back on the recliner, the sun warming his face. "Oh, Dante, it's been surprisingly refreshing," Eliza Monroe replied, her voice light. "Honestly, I planned to escape because of your wedding, but it turned out to be exactly what I needed." He could hear her munching something on the other end of the line. "Eliza," Dante's tone shifted, the reminder of his forced marriage souring his mood. "You and Granny wanted this. I did it for you, and now you're acting like I betrayed you." It wasn't fair. The whole arrangement had been Serafina Voss's idea, and Eliza had supported it. Dante knew Eliza loved him, but the constant guilt-tripping was wearing him down. He had only asked for two things: not to see the girl's face and no interference from her in his life. No friendship, no communication. That was why she was being paid such a large sum. Serafina had suggested 1 million, but Dante knew how hard it would be to live in isolation for a year. He'd insisted on 10. "Hey, I'm sorry, babe, I'll talk to you later, Eliza." Dante cut her off and ended the call. It had been 3 days since the wedding. The girl, Riley Morgan, had kept her side of the bargain. He hadn't seen her face, but the way she curled up on the mattress in the corner had once made him smile. Now, it made him feel something closer to pity. His phone rang again. He glanced at the screen and rejected the call. Eliza was trying to apologize, trying to explain her harsh words. She'd been obsessed with knowing if Riley was beautiful, convinced Dante had broken the rules. She didn't believe he hadn't seen her face. After several more attempts, Dante finally put his phone on silent. "Hey, mate." Mason Drake, his childhood friend, emerged from the pool and dropped onto the recliner beside him, toweling off his hair. "You look wrecked. What's going on?" Mason asked. Dante handed him the phone. "She keeps calling. First they marry me off to a maid, now they want to know if she's attractive enough to stir things up." Mason raised an eyebrow. 10 missed calls. Your fiancé's losing it." He was about to hand the phone back when he paused. "Dante, it's Granny. Is everything okay at home? You look tense." Mason asked as he drove, glancing at Dante's furrowed brow. Granny sounded panicked, Dante muttered, running a hand through his hair for the 100th time. Riley, the girl I married, she's missing. Mason slammed the brakes, jolting Dante against the seatbelt. Missing? What do you mean missing? She's not a necklace you misplaced. Dante sighed. I don't know, she's not answering, she's not in the room. Granny's worried. She was paid to stay in the corner of your room, Dante. That's not normal. You're treating her like furniture. She agreed to it, Dante snapped. She's not supposed to be involved in my life. That was the deal. Mason's voice rose. You're the head of this empire, and you think it's okay to pay someone to disappear into a corner. What if she's hurt? What if she ran away because she couldn't take it anymore? Dante clenched his jaw. I didn't ask for this marriage. Granny and Eliza did. His mother and his girlfriend. Mason shook his head. You may not have asked for it, but you're part of it now. You need to find her, and maybe, just maybe, treat her like a human being. Dante didn't respond. He stared out the window, the weight of Mason's words settling heavily on his shoulders. Mason Drake's voice had echoed in Dante's ears long after he slammed the car door and walked away. She's your lawfully wedded wife, Dante. She's living under your roof, and you're treating her like a stranger. Dante hadn't stopped him. He was too angry, too overwhelmed. He slid into the driver's seat and sped off, the tires screeching as he left the curb. When he reached the mansion, Serafina Voss was slumped on the couch, her hand pressed to her forehead. Jordan Vale stood beside her, trying to calm her down. Did you check the cameras? Dante demanded, his voice sharp. We were waiting for you, Jordan replied. Granny's blood pressure spiked. Someone had to stay with her. The maid had gone to deliver lunch to Riley Morgan's room and found it empty. The guards hadn't seen her leave the estate. That meant she was still somewhere inside. Dante's frustration surged. He stormed up the stairs. I hope she doesn't let out our family secrets, Serafina called after him. He didn't respond. He didn't care about secrets. He cared about finding Riley. On his floor, Dante opened the bedroom door. The carpet was damp. He frowned and checked the bathroom. Under the bed, nothing. A strange unease settled in his chest. He searched every room, the guest suites, the private theater, the indoor games hall, nothing. Where was she? He stopped outside the last room, the old storeroom that once belonged to his mother. It was rarely used. He tried the handle, locked. Bring the keys to the storeroom, he said into the intercom. A housekeeper arrived with a ring of keys and began testing them one by one. Dante's patience wore thinner with each click. Finally, the door opened. He dismissed the helper and stepped inside. Dust hung in the air, furniture lay under white sheets. He scanned the room, empty. He was about to leave when he noticed a damp patch on the sheet covering the couch. Frowning, he stepped closer. Something told him to check. He knelt down and slowly looked beneath the bed. There she was. Riley, curled up, soaked to the bone, shivering uncontrollably. His heart stopped. No one in their right mind would hide in this room. It had no ventilation, no air conditioning, just dust and shadows. Hey, he said softly, reaching for her wrist. Riley. She flinched and tried to pull away weakly. He gently helped her out from under the bed. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice quieter than he'd ever heard it. She tried to push him away, her hands trembling. Please don't touch me. Let me go, she whispered, her voice hoarse and feverish. Her cheeks were flushed, her skin burning. She was crying. You're safe, Dante said gently, brushing her damp hair from her face. And then he saw her. Really saw her. The most beautiful face he'd ever seen. Eyes like sea glass, clear, vulnerable, afraid. Why had Serafina said she wasn't beautiful? Riley Morgan was trembling. Her drenched clothes clung to her skin, her body shivering from cold and fear. Dante Voss had found her hidden beneath the bed in the old storeroom, a place no one ever entered. The moment he saw her, something shifted inside him, a mix of guilt, protectiveness, and shame. He gently pulled her out, careful not to startle her further. Her eyes were glassy, her cheeks flushed with fever. She tried to push him away, her voice barely a whisper. "Please don't touch me, let me go." "You're safe now," Dante said softly, brushing her wet hair from her face. He had never spoken so gently to anyone before, not even to Eliza Monroe, his fiancée. Riley's eyes fluttered open, revealing a stunning shade of aqua green. Dante froze. How could anyone say she wasn't beautiful? How could his grandmother, Serafina Voss, have dismissed her so easily? "I won't tell anyone," Riley murmured, her voice cracking. Dante's heart sank. Something was terribly wrong. He wrapped a towel around her shoulders and carried her to the guest room, the one Mason Drake or Eliza usually used when they stayed over. It was quiet, clean, and far from his own bedroom. She resisted at first, pleading not to be taken back to the room she feared. Dante reassured her, "We're not going there, you're safe here." He placed her gently on the couch and rushed to his room to find something dry for her to wear. Her bag was missing. No clothes, no belongings. He grabbed one of his shirts and returned. "Here," he said, placing the shirt beside her and turning away to give her privacy. After a few minutes he asked quietly, "Done?" A soft yes came from behind him. When he turned, he saw her curled up, trying to cover herself. He quickly fetched a pair of clean shorts and handed them to her, then gathered her wet clothes and placed them in the laundry basket. He had already called his assistant, Jordan Vale, to bring the medicine box. Once Jordan arrived, Dante instructed him to inform Serafina that Riley had been found. After Riley took the medicine, Dante helped her onto the bed. "You're dry and clean now. It's safe to rest," he said gently, like he was speaking to a child who needed comfort. She looked up at him, a tear slipping down her cheek. "You're a good man," she whispered. Dante wiped the tear away, his chest tightening. "Please don't leave me alone," she added. "My husband might come back." Those words hit him like a punch to the gut. Someone had pretended to be her husband. Someone had frightened her under his roof. Dante held her close, his voice steady. "Nobody will hurt you again, not here, not ever." For the first time in his life, Dante Voss felt the weight of shame, not for something he had done, but for something he had failed to prevent. Riley tried to stretch, but her limbs felt like they were glued to the surface beneath her. The mattress she'd been assigned was never comfortable, but today it felt like a slab of concrete, and that slab was snoring. She groaned softly. Her body was heavy with exhaustion, and the idea of getting up felt like punishment. No one was waiting for her. No plans. No purpose. What was the point of waking up when boredom was the only thing greeting her? Maybe she should just take a handful of sleeping pills and hibernate for a year. Couch, mattress, floor, didn't matter. Just sleep like the dead. Her cheek ached from pressing against the hard surface, so she turned her head to the other side. That's when her eyes snapped open. She was not on her mattress. Blinking rapidly, Riley lifted her face and looked down. Oh no! There was a man beneath her, a man she didn't recognize, a man who was absolutely, unfairly, ridiculously gorgeous. He wasn't her husband, that much was clear, but whoever he was, he looked like he'd been carved by the gods. Long lashes, full lips, a jawline that could cut glass. If beauty were a crime, this man deserved a public trial and execution. His face was sculpted perfection. Riley searched for flaws. Anything to make him less intimidating. But no, nothing, not even a freckle out of place. What color were his eyes? Black, blue, green. His dark hair spilled across his forehead, and she couldn't resist. She reached out to brush it away, only to accidentally plop her hand back onto his face. She giggled and did it again. It became a game. How had this Adonis ended up under her? Her friends from the orphanage would have fainted on the spot. Even asleep, he wore a faint scowl, like he was annoyed by dreams. She rested her cheek on his chest again, trying to piece together how they'd ended up tangled in bed. Had they gotten drunk, slept together? Was she no longer a virgin? Sigh. Then, like a floodgate opening, memories from the previous day rushed in. Her body shivered involuntarily, and the moment it did, two strong arms wrapped around her protectively. "You okay?" came a deep, sleepy voice. Concern laced every syllable. Was he talking to her? Of course he was. Who else? He rolled over, gently placing her on the bed, and checked her forehead with the back of his hand. His body pressed against hers, warm and solid. His face was so close she could practically taste it. She was disappointed to see him wearing a t-shirt. Didn't movie men sleep shirtless, or in boxers, or nothing? Her eyes drifted down, full-length cotton pajamas, no shorts, no nakedness. "Kitten, can you hear me?" he asked, his gaze following hers. "Don't worry, nobody will hurt you." "Not even my husband," she whispered. His arms loosened, and he sat up on the edge of the bed. Something about her question disturbed him. Maybe her husband was his cousin, his brother. "No one," he said firmly, "means no one." He turned his face slightly, then looked away. "Can I stay here instead of going back to my room?" she asked quickly. "I'll bring my mattress." He didn't turn around. "If I said no one will mess with you, then trust me." With that, he stood and walked to the bathroom. Riley's eyes followed him until the door closed. Under those pajamas, his tight ass was. Oh God, she was turning into a creep. Mother Superior would have smacked her for such impure thoughts. She always said to keep the mind occupied. Riley had always dreamed of being rich enough to do nothing for a year. Well, her prayers were answered. She was going to be a millionaire in a year. All she had to do was eat, sleep, and get fat. The bathroom door opened. Riley stood up, anxiety creeping in. She didn't want to return to that bedroom. What if her husband came back? "Kitten, why are you crying?" the man asked, stepping into the room like a model from a fashion magazine. His hair was wet, his towel draped over his shoulders. Why wasn't it wrapped low around his waist like in movies? Real life was such a letdown. He brushed his hair back and held her shoulders gently. "Don't be scared. What do you want for breakfast?" His gaze was intense. She stared at him, mesmerized. "Your eyes," she blurted. A smirk tugged at his lips. "You want my eyes for breakfast?" "No, I mean the color. What is it?" "Golden." "Amber," he replied. "Now tell me what you want to eat, princess." He turned toward the door, and panic surged through her. She rushed forward and hugged him from behind. "Please don't leave me alone. What if he comes back?" He stiffened slightly. "If he does, punch him. You can't keep running." "I'm all alone. The maids forget my bag. I'm not allowed to use the bathroom when he's around. They were supposed to give me 3 meals. Now I barely get 2. He smelled divine. She didn't know who else to turn to. He had an aura that demanded respect. He clearly had influence in this house. "I'll bring your bag," he said softly, and left the room. Riley was escorted into the same bedroom that once belonged to her husband. The air felt heavy, like it remembered the cruelty that had taken place within its walls. Her heart thudded with unease. What if that sick man returned? She trusted her mysterious savior, at least she wanted to. But her mother had once told her, wealthy men only protected their own kind. Riley was neither rich nor powerful, just a maid, a contractual wife to a monster, and this smart-mouthed, round-ass stranger. He might be sincere, but trusting him felt like playing with fire. Inside the room, she walked to the corner where her mattress had been dumped. Her luggage was still missing. She needed to speak to the man who had helped her, the one who'd held her through the night. Yes, she was blushing. No, she couldn't help it. "Hello," a hand waved in front of her face, snapping her out of her daze. "Back to earth, kitten." The gorgeous man was frowning. "I've been calling you. Where were you?" "Oh, just floating in heaven, handsome." I was, she stammered. He waited patiently. "I haven't got my bags, mister," she trailed off, hoping he'd offer his name. He didn't. Instead, he sighed. "Helga will bring your lunch. It's past breakfast." "Please wait," she called out as he turned to leave. "I'm Riley," she said with a shaky smile. He nodded politely and walked out. Disappointment settled in her chest. He seemed warmer earlier, more approachable. Now he was distant. Moments later, Helga entered with a tray. "Let me know if you want anything else. I brought beef stew. It's the young master's favorite." Her tone was clipped. No warmth, no smile. Her white hair was tied in a perfect bun, not a strand out of place. Beef stew, the favorite of the man she was forced to marry. The thought made Riley's stomach churn. "Miss Helga," she said, watching the woman place the tray on the carpet, "I haven't received my suitcases. Could you ask someone to bring them?" Helga leaned in, her voice a venomous whisper. "I'm not here to take your orders, sweetie. Go and F***CK yourself." Excuse me," Riley gasped. Helga nodded, her expression smug. "I brought the meal because I was told to. That doesn't mean you get to act like royalty." Riley was speechless. Her bag had everything: clothes, toiletries, essentials. She couldn't keep washing the same dress with male-scented body wash. She needed her lingerie, her brush, her pads. God. Helga left without another word. Was there anyone in this house who wasn't rude? When Madame Serafina had screamed at her during the marriage signing, Riley thought she'd seen the worst. She was wrong. The maids were worse. Helga carried herself like she owned the place. Everyone here was a pain in the ass. Her eyes drifted to the tray. She slid it closer and lifted the cover. The aroma of hot stew and buttered bread hit her nose. She was starving. But then she remembered it was her husband's favorite. "No, thank you." She pushed the tray away, ignoring the growls of her stomach, and curled up on the mattress. Her body still felt weak from the previous night. She closed her eyes, hopping to escape into sleep. The door creaked open. She didn't move, probably Helga back to collect the tray. Better to pretend to sleep than face another round of insults. "I see your food's still untouched, kitten." Riley's eyes fluttered open. It was him, the man who refused to share his name. "You can't take your medicine on an empty stomach," he said, his voice sharper now. "Master," Helga entered briskly, carrying a box of medicine. "Alex asked me to give you this." She moved quickly, but when her eyes landed on the untouched tray, her demeanor shifted. "Good God, you haven't even started eating," she exclaimed, her face suddenly friendly. Riley blinked. Was this the same woman who'd cursed at her minutes ago? Riley wanted to ignore the two-faced maid, but Helga's dramatic flair made it impossible to look away. The woman was performing like she was auditioning for a soap opera. "Oh dear, I think you don't like the taste. Ask him," Helga chirped, tilting her head toward the amber-eyed man standing nearby. "Master, you just ate this stew. Is it that bad?" she teased, her voice laced with mock innocence. But the man's gaze remained fixed on Riley's face, unreadable and intense. Helga's message was clear. He had dined with his family without Riley, as if that would sting. It didn't. He wasn't a servant confined to the room. Of course he had the freedom to eat elsewhere. Still, guilt flickered across his features. He closed his eyes briefly, exhaling in frustration. "Leave," he said, his voice low and commanding. Helga blinked, clearly not expecting the shift in tone. "Master." "I said leave, Helga." Her shoulders drooped and she began backing toward the door, but Riley wasn't finished. "Ms. Helga," she called, her voice sweet as honey. Helga paused, surprised. "Yes, dear." "How old are you?" Riley asked, tilting her head. Both Helga and the man looked taken aback. "Why, my dear, 70. Helga chuckled, glancing at the man for approval. Because you just said I'm not supposed to eat until you bring me my bag, Riley replied, stretching her lips into a smile, so wide it nearly hurt. Silence. Helga's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked like a stunned statue. Oh, yes, I would now I remember. She laughed nervously, face-palming. I'll just get your suitcase and bag for you. She spun around and exited quickly. The man sat down on the floor beside Riley, removing the tray's cover. We have special cooks here, he said casually, pulling the tray closer. But for me, it's Helga who prepares my meals. He picked up a fork, speared a piece of meat, and held it out to her. You need your energy, kitten. Riley pressed her lips together, refusing to open her mouth. He raised an eyebrow, waiting. She shook her head and he frowned slightly. What? She didn't move, just stared at him. I can eat my food, Mr. Nameless, she said, taking the fork from his hand and popping the beef into her mouth. It was divine. She noticed a tiny cleft at the corner of his lips. How would he look if he smiled? A real full smile. I know you must be busy, Mr. Nameless. Leave the medicines, I'll take them. She focused on the tray. I don't like beef stew, but this one is delish. She began scooping mashed potatoes and veggies onto her plate. He didn't say a word, just kept watching her with those golden, no, amber eyes. Dante, he whispered. Sorry, what? She paused mid-bite. My name, it's Dante, he tried to smile. She didn't look away, and when she didn't, he gently took the fork from her hand and began feeding her bite-sized pieces. So Dante, she said between chews, what do you do? How are you related to my husband? Won't he mind if he sees you helping me? He coughed lightly and cleared his throat. There was something about him, an air of quiet authority. Riley's maid friend had told her the Serafina household had only one son. She had stood her ground with Helga, but she knew more insults were coming. Dante wasn't the Serafina heir, maybe a cousin or an assistant. But assistants didn't feed their employer's wife, contractual or not. Riley leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. So tell me, Dante, who are you? She bit her lower lip, her heart thudding when his eyes flicked to her mouth for just a second. Do you work for them, Dante? She asked. Or are you related to that old goat, Electra? Whatever she said, it struck a nerve. Dante threw his head back and laughed, a deep, rich sound that filled the room. Riley couldn't lift her head. Her palms were damp against her cheeks, her breath shallow. The pain in her lower belly was growing, and the panic of not having her essentials was making it worse. She had never felt so helpless. The knock on the bathroom door had been a blessing. It wasn't her husband. It was Dante. Kitten, hello, he had said softly. I hope you're okay. I'm waiting here. Take your time. She wanted to cry just hearing his voice. Just Dante, she called out, unsure if she should ask him for help. It felt awkward, embarrassing. Kitten, I haven't got my other bag. Can you bring it? Her voice trembled. You haven't got your bags back? He asked, clearly surprised. No, she whispered, biting her lip. The wave of emotion was too strong. She wanted to sob. In the orphanage they had little, but they had each other. They had peace. Here she had luxury and loneliness. Kitten, don't worry. I'll bring it right now, Dante said, his voice edged with fury. Do you hear me? She didn't respond. She couldn't. Her body was frozen, her mind spiraling. Kitten, answer me, honey. His voice was so gentle, so full of concern that it broke her. She cried silently, her shoulders shaking. Then she heard the door handle twist, slowly, carefully. Kitten, I'm coming inside, he warned. She didn't stop him. Dante stepped in and crouched beside her. His presence was warm, grounding. He touched her head gently, then she heard the soft rustle of fabric. He was taking off his jacket. Without a word, he draped it over her knees, shielding her modesty. Then he reached for her hands and moved them away from her face. His fingers were firm but kind as he tilted her chin upward. "Riley, sweetheart, you're crying. What happened?" The concern in Dante's voice was so raw, so genuine, it made Riley's tears flow harder. She couldn't stop them. Her body was exhausted, her emotions frayed, and his kindness was too much. "Shh," still kneeling beside her, Dante reached up and gently wiped her cheeks with his thumb. "Can you be alone for a few minutes? I'll be back in a jiff." He snapped his fingers playfully, trying to lighten the mood. Riley nodded, barely able to meet his eyes. Without thinking, Dante leaned forward and placed a soft kiss on her forehead. Then he stood and walked out, leaving the bathroom door slightly ajar. Riley stared at the door, stunned. Her fingers moved to her forehead where his lips had touched. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, feeling foolish for crying so much. Dante wasn't at fault. It was just everything. The stress, the isolation, the timing. She tapped her foot nervously, waiting for him to return. When she heard his footsteps approaching, her heart skipped. "Riley," he called gently from outside the door. Such a gentleman, always asking permission. "Yes," she replied softly. He entered with his gaze lowered, extending a brown envelope toward her. Riley looked at him, then at the bag, confused. Before she could ask, Dante gave her a subtle nod, encouraging her to take it. The smile on his lips deepened the cleft beside his mouth, and her heart fluttered. "Just call me when you're done. I'm not leaving you here," he said, turning his back to give her privacy. Inside the bag, she found disposable panties, tampons, and pads. "Bless you, Dante." She silently thanked him as she cleaned up and washed her hands. When the water ran, Dante turned around. The moment his eyes met hers, his face lit up. "No, no, no, no. Riley, don't go there. He's out of your league." "All set," he said cheerfully, stepping closer and brushing a strand of hair off her forehead. Then, without warning, he scooped her up like she weighed nothing. "Dante, I'm perfectly fine. Trust me," she protested, but he ignored her and gently placed her on the bed. "Here, take this." He handed her another brown bag, larger and heavier. "What is this?" Riley peeked inside, puzzled. "Juice bottles, chocolates, candies, biscuits, and chips." "Just in case you want to kill some time," he shrugged, placing a pillow behind her back. "I didn't know what you liked, so I grabbed a bit of everything." He sat beside her on the mattress, close, really close. "Chips," he added, glancing at her. "So what else?" "Doritos," Riley blurted out, eyes sparkling. Dante turned his head, raising a brow. "Really, Doritos?" "Yup, I can finish all the packs. I love them, especially the spicy ones. Yum." She closed her eyes, imagining the taste. Eating Doritos, watching a good romantic movie. "Well, then you'll get lots of them within the hour," he smiled. Her smile faltered. She'd forgotten she wasn't allowed to switch on the TV. He noticed immediately. "What is it now, princess?" he asked, his voice soft but perceptive. How did he always know? "Nothing. You're treating me like I'm sick," she said, trying to sound casual. His amber-colored eyes scanned her face, saying nothing, just watching. Her heart thudded in her chest. "What was in your missing bag?" he asked. But Riley didn't hear him. She was too busy staring at his lips. "Kitten, stop it," he said, a little louder, but with laughter dancing in his eyes. "Sorry, what?" Riley blinked, still caught in the haze of his closeness. "What was in your other bag? Clothes, shoes?" Dante asked, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "Just make a mental note of whatever you want. I'll take you shopping." That got her attention. "Shopping?" "No, I can't," she blurted, her voice sharp with panic. Dante didn't argue. He just looked at her, his gaze steady, unreadable. There was something in his eyes, guilt maybe, but none of this was his fault. "You better take your rest. Enjoy your snacks," he said, ruffling her hair before standing up. Riley felt a pang of disappointment. He was leaving already. "Behave yourself, Riley." The man has a job. He wasn't offered 10 million to sit in a room doing nothing like you were. She spoke to herself. She stood up, clutching her snack bag. Where are you going? Dante asked as she walked toward her mattress. I'm not allowed to use the bed, Dante. I have nothing to do here. So if I fall asleep, I don't want to be caught red-handed. He stood there silent, as if weighing something in his mind. Are you planning to sleep? No, she shook her head. Why? You said you don't have anything to do right now. How about you accompany me to my office and help me with some calculations? Your office, she echoed. I mean, I just said I'm not allowed to step out. My office is on this floor, so don't worry about being caught. Even if someone sees us, I know how to handle it. Riley hesitated. He wasn't just some assistant, that much was clear. He had authority, maybe a cousin of her husband or someone even closer. But what good would it do to stay locked in the room? At least with Dante, she'd have decent company, a human voice, a moment of normalcy. Take me to your office, she said finally. Let's see how I can help. The joy on Dante's face was unmistakable. She made the right choice. Before leaving, she grabbed her snack bag. As she stepped into the hallway, a shiver ran through her, memories of the last time she'd left the room. Dante sensed it immediately. He wrapped a heavy arm around her shoulders. I'm right beside you, kitten. Now that's a bummer, Eliza muttered, watching Alina's nostrils flare as she tried to suppress a yawn. They weren't alone in their exhaustion. All three of them, Alina, Juliet, and Eliza, came from wealth. Money had never been a problem. Designer bags, private chauffeurs, luxury suites, they had it all. But right now, none of that mattered. They were stranded at the airport, and no amount of privilege could conjure a flight out of thin air. Every available seat was booked. The few flights left were either delayed or completely full. The lounge was crowded, the air stale, and the mood sour. Can't we go back to the hotel? Juliet groaned, stretching her legs across the armrest. I'm getting tired. Eliza clenched her fists. Just moments ago, these same girls were ready to fight for her, to stand by her side like loyal warriors. Now they were whining like spoiled brats. The shift in energy was irritating. Alina, ever the perceptive one, must have sensed Eliza's rising fury. Eliza, why don't you try calling Dante again? She suggested gently. He might pick up this time. With a sigh, Eliza pulled out her phone and dialed. The line rang, and rang, and rang again. No answer. Damn, she hissed, tossing her phone onto the empty seat beside her. Wait, Juliet said, leaning forward. Why don't you try calling him from my phone? Eliza shot her a look, the signature I don't trust you glare. He knows you're trying to reach him, Juliet explained. He might answer an unknown number. Eliza narrowed her eyes. Using Juliet's phone meant Dante's number would be stored there, and she didn't like that. Juliet wasn't just a friend. She was a jealous woman who had always wanted Dante for herself. She had even collaborated with Dante's mother to hire a maid named Riley, hoping to stir trouble. But everything had gone wrong. The plan had backfired. Oh, come on, Eliza. Juliet rolled her eyes. You can delete the number after the call. It's not hard to get someone's contact these days. Juliet said it casually, but Eliza knew her too well. She knew exactly the kind of friend she had. Okay, that made sense. But still, please don't judge her. When it came to her fiancé, Eliza trusted no one, not even her closest friends. Alina nodded in agreement. Just try. What's the worst that could happen? Taking Juliet's phone reluctantly, Eliza dialed Dante's number. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. Then click. He answered. Eliza's heart dropped. He had ignored her calls for days, and now he was picking up a stranger's number. That wasn't fair. Hello, Eliza. Can you please stop calling me from your friend's number? Dante's voice came through, calm but unmistakably aware. Her mouth fell open. He knew. Here she was, trying to protect him from her friend's curiosity, and he already had their numbers saved. He had a record of everyone around her. Before she could respond, Juliet reached over and tapped the speaker icon. Dante, Eliza began, her voice faltering. Don't say anything, just come back. We can talk about it once you're here, Dante cut her off. That was a good sign. He was talking to her. That meant something. Earlier you weren't answering my calls, so I thought, that's why I tried from a different number. She felt a flush of embarrassment creep up her neck. You're still mad at me, aren't you? I'm not mad, Eliza, Dante replied, his voice heavy and deliberate. Unlike you, not everyone has time for a trip to unwind. Some of us work, if you know what I mean. A smile tugged at Eliza's lips. He was teasing her. Her friends caught the shift in her expression and mouthed a silent, "Thank God." Elena gave her a thumbs up. Relief washed over them. They were ready to return to the hotel and resume their vacation. I told you there was nothing to worry about, Juliet whispered, nudging Eliza's shoulder. Maybe they were right. Maybe she had overreacted. Dante was still the same, still hers. What should I bring for you? She asked, leaning back and watching travelers bustle through the airport. Nothing, he replied, distracted, his usual answer. Dante never asked for gifts, but he gave them freely, spoiling her without hesitation. You must be in your office then. I just wanted to talk to you, Dante. Can't wait to see you, darling. Her voice softened. I love you so much. She had said it countless times before, but this time she held her breath. Just as Dante was about to respond, a female voice echoed near him. Dante, do I have to include this company's calculations or leave it? Eliza's eyes narrowed. That voice. Dante, who is that? She asked sharply. He didn't pause. It's Riley, Eliza. I think I need to disconnect the call. We need to finish this before evening. Okay, Dante, bye. He didn't explain who Riley was, but Eliza knew. The girl hadn't made it to the family dining table, but she had made it into his office. She was a maid, and she had called him Dante. In the Serafina household, every servant was required to address him as young master. By Dante. The call ended. Eliza's friend stared at her, waiting for a reaction. Now come on, let's go back to the hotel. He's still into you, Elena said cheerfully. I can't, Eliza muttered. What? Elena's brows furrowed. But why? The girl you just heard on the phone is in his study. She's the same girl. Eliza didn't want to call her Dante's wife. He never allowed anyone in his study, his office, except me and Alex. Even Sean isn't allowed in there. Oh my God, Eliza, Elena gasped. You mean the same study he's so obsessed with, the one he refused to even kiss you in because he didn't want to stain the sanctity of it? Exactly. Dante worshipped that space. It was sacred to him. And now she was in it. Girls, we're going back, Eliza said firmly. I'm going to Dante. I'm going to claim what's mine. This time, her friends didn't argue. Whoever that girl was, she had picked a fight with the wrong person. The next day, Eliza arrived at Dante's house with her friends, Elena and Juliet. She had barely slept the night before. Her mind was spinning with questions, doubts, and a strange feeling she couldn't shake off. She needed answers. She needed to see him. As they stepped into the grand Serafina estate, everything felt too quiet. The house was beautiful as always, but something about the silence made her uneasy. Her heels echoed on the marble floor, each step louder than the last. She didn't wait for anyone to announce her. She knew where to go. Dante's study. That room was off-limits to almost everyone. Even she, his fiancée, had only been allowed in a few times. It was his private space, his world. But today, the door was slightly open. Eliza pushed it gently and stepped inside. What she saw made her stop in her tracks. Dante was sitting at his desk, leaning forward, completely focused. Across from him sat Riley, the girl they had hired as a maid. But she didn't look like a maid now. She looked calm, confident, and completely at ease in that room. They were talking, laughing softly, and Dante, he looked different, relaxed, engaged, like he hadn't been in a long time. Eliza's heart sank. "Dante," she said, trying to get his attention. He didn't even look up. "Dante," she said again, louder this time. Still nothing. Juliet and Alina stood behind her, confused and uncomfortable. "Dante," she snapped. Finally, he turned his head slowly, like he had just remembered she existed. "Oh," he said, his voice flat, "you're here." That was it, no smile, no warmth, no apology. He stood up, straightened his shirt, and walked toward them, not to greet her but to guide them out. "Let me walk you out," he said. Eliza blinked, walked them out. He wasn't even offering them a seat in the living room, not even a glass of water, just out. Before leaving the room, he leaned down and whispered something to Riley. Eliza couldn't hear what he said, but Riley nodded with a small smile. That smile made Eliza's stomach twist. As they walked outside, the sun was shining, but Eliza felt cold. Her chest was tight, her thoughts racing. She couldn't hold it in anymore. "Dante," she said, stopping in her tracks. "That girl, she's supposed to be a maid. Why is she in your office?" Dante turned to face her. His expression was calm, but there was something sharp in his eyes. "Maid," he repeated. "I'd appreciate it if you didn't use that word for someone so innocent." Eliza stared at him. "Innocent? You're defending her now." "I've been expecting you to come," he said, ignoring her question. "And now that you're here." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a white envelope. "I have this for you." Eliza took it slowly. Her hands were shaking. She opened the envelope and unfolded the paper inside. Her eyes scanned the words. And then her heart stopped. It was a breakup letter. She couldn't believe it. "Dante," she whispered, "are you joking?" But he was. He didn't laugh. He didn't explain. He just stood there, looking at her like this was something he had already made peace with. Juliet gasped. Alina covered her mouth. Eliza felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. She had loved him, she had fought for him, she had trusted him. And now he was ending it, just like that. And for what? For Riley. The girl they had hired to be invisible. The girl they thought would never matter. But she did. She mattered more than Eliza ever imagined. Eliza looked at him, her voice trembling. "You don't love me anymore." Dante didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. Eliza's fingers crushed the letter in her hand. Her chest ached. Her pride was shattered. Juliet stepped forward, trying to say something, but Eliza shook her head. She didn't want comfort. She didn't want pity. She wanted to scream, to cry, to ask why. But she didn't. Instead, she looked at Dante one last time. "You're making a mistake." Dante's eyes flicked toward her, then back to the house. "No," he said, "I'm finally making the right choice." That was the final blow. Eliza turned and walked away, her friends following behind her in silence. Inside the car, no one spoke. The engine hummed softly, but the silence was louder than anything. Eliza stared out the window, her mind spinning. She had lost him. Not to another rich girl, not to someone with more power or beauty. To a girl who had nothing but her heart. To a girl who had never tried to compete. To a girl who had simply been herself. Back at the hotel, Eliza sat on the edge of the bed, the crumpled letter still in her hand. Juliet and Alina hovered nearby, unsure of what to say. Finally, Eliza broke the silence. "I was jealous," she said quietly. "I thought I was protecting what was mine, but I was just scared." Juliet sat beside her. "You loved him." "I did," Eliza nodded. "But I let jealousy ruin everything. I let it control me." Elena knelt in front of her. "You're still Eliza Serafina. You'll rise again." Eliza gave a small smile. "I know, but this time I'll rise without bitterness." She looked at the letter one last time, then tore it in half. She was done holding on to something that no longer existed. The lesson was clear. Jealousy doesn't protect love, it destroys it. It blinds you, it makes you act out of fear, it turns love into control. And Eliza, she was done letting jealousy rule her life. She stood up, wiped her face, and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting, and she learned her lesson in the hard way.